Welcome to the How Do You Human podcast. My name is Sam,
And this is Zaya.
and thank you so much for joining us in our very first episode titled Life as a Death Sentence. In this episode, we are tackling a universal truth: life as a death sentence. To be given the gift of life is to also embrace its inescapable counterpart, death. It's a reality that shapes and defines us, offering contrast, meaning, and perspective to every moment we live. Together, we'll explore how this understanding of life's impermanence can deepen our connection to it, inspire purpose, and help us answer the question, what does it mean to truly live when we know it must one day end? All right, let's dive right in.
Hello, Sam.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you? I
Good.
thought I would ask you what was your inspiration behind the podcast and especially this particular topic, life as a death sentence.
Yeah, the podcast is really just exploring the many different facets of being human, the way that the human experience is so vast. And life as a death sentence came about probably in 2020, having watched a workshop by Esther Perel. And in this workshop, she talks about the importance of talking with your loved ones about death and the way that avoiding that topic doesn't make us any more prepared for it. And that talking about death is, in fact, talking about life, your hopes, your fears. So I figured we would begin this podcast with the end in mind, knowing that it's kind of the one thing that is going to link and connect every human experience. Because while race, where you live, and your age, depending on the time period you're in, all of that can change the experience and kind of make it hard for us to understand each other, empathize with each other. Death is the one thing that's promised for everyone. So I thought it was a good one. I thought it was a good topic.
Great one. Great one.
What was your thought when I proposed? Like, all right, let's come out hitting hard and just talk about dying.
Yeah, like wow, that's the first episode. We're gonna hit a grand slam on the very first one in terms of how far we're gonna reach. Um, and so I was surprised, but also, uh, down for it and excited to jump in. I think we both have been fans of Esther Perel, and I think I even remember seeing her talk about death. And I even think of this qualm like the question and the answer are all wrapped up into one entity. And so, and yeah, I guess life and death is too. And I'll never forget hearing people talk about how if we don't just fear death, but we also fear living. And so then I thought to my own experience of just we have our trauma stories, we have our survivor stories, and I think what it creates for many of us is an avoidance. And so when I thought about my own history around talking about death or my own ideas around death, mostly what I saw is an avoidance that I really have never hadn't spent a lot of time in the subject. And so it made sense to like these polar opposites are really just one. And yeah, so I was excited to dive in the more I thought about it.
Do you think we should talk more about death? And if so, how do you think you would introduce those conversations into your life?
100% yes, in terms of talking about it more. Just from how we preface it, right? Like it can hopefully give us perspective on how to live by understanding the two of these facets that go together. And what was the second part, though, of that question?
How do you feel you would introduce it more into your life or into your circle? Um, it's like, hey guys, random day or sitting at dinner, let's talk about dying, like I've
Probably just in the same way you did, with a laugh, like some lightheartedness, and just hopefully introducing it in a way where people see it as a positive and not something scary, as something that can be grasped, and yeah, casually. And hopefully that leads into like, oh, wow, talking about this actually helps us prepare and helps us even have different perspectives on how we're living in the present moment.
I've explored about it a little bit more over the last couple years, and not with a ton of people, but the first question, are you okay? Like,
Like
there's
that's
should
something's
I
wrong with you, right? To be talking about it.
start you either, whether you're mentally well or whether you're like sick and having a need to prepare for my own, departure. But in in having that many responses, I think it really highlights that you're not the only one that's probably avoiding it, that's probably something that's just embedded in our culture. And so then I think about, well, what else? What else about death can we talk about in terms of what are the cultural norms from funerals to the grieving process to like what do you see or what do you observe when you look at our culture?
Hmm. I've always observed uh, cultural things that just don't make sense or that I don't necessarily resonate with. And even like even the idea of the cost and the expense and the all that's involved in burials and having a fancy tombstone. The more I look at the way we use land, whether it's for storaging, whether it's for grave sites, it's like when you think about what land is and how it can serve us and how we can connect to the original ancestor, our land. Yeah, just there's so many ways about like American culture around death that I've just kind of just scratched my head at, especially as I learn more about what's out there in terms of. I think about in I was just living in Hawaii all of 2024, and you can actually bury your loved one right in your backyard after they die.
Wow.
And imagine like we might talk later about our family situation, like the cost of both time and money and stress that we had to endure because we weren't prepared for death. And this lady I knew, they had their ducks in a row. Yes, there's probably some red tape around it, and I heard that you have to do it within 30 hours of the person dying. They have to be buried in your backyard. But what a beautiful tradition to learn about that and how if you have land and you want your family and the whole ancestral chain to exist there even post life, you can do that in Hawaii. Or the other thing that really inspired me is hearing about the some cultures in Africa who I don't know what their burial looks like, but they they equally have an excitement around death to accompany the grief and the sadness because they believe in this particular tribe that I cannot think of at the moment. They believe that when our family members pass, they're actually converting into becoming our angels, and now they're going to protect us and guide us and oversee us, and we still have a connection with the with the spirit realm and those who pass along. So there's this like, oh yeah, just added to my ancestral team. And so it's a cool way of thinking about it. Like instead of just thinking about death as like this sad thing, which it is, you don't want to bypass that, but to also have other ideas and other beliefs and ways of looking at it.
I resonate with a lot of what you said in the first part being the cost and expense of dying. It's like they're still coming for money from me and I'm dead. Like, why? It just makes no sense. I'm going to say it here on camera. When it comes to my passing, cheapest way possible, like cremate me and put me in some soil, bury me with like the seed of a willow tree. That was my favorite tree growing up.
That's exactly how I feel. It's like, don't visit me at a site. Like, visit me in your prayer, in your meditation. Like, try to notice me when an owl flies by or like there's some sign that's showing up that's those are the visitations that more resonate more with like how I think about life and death.
Well, and your story really becomes final when the people you've loved and that have loved you also pass, right? So outside of there being a casket in the ground, like I don't want a casket in the ground somewhere. Carry me in your heart, right? Like you said, talk about me or yeah, just remember me fondly. Like that's all I really need. And um
I even feel like if I gifted you something, Sam, you wearing that or you storing that or you having that at your home or in your possession works. Like you don't need a piece of my skeleton.
the yeah, all of that just blows my
And
mind.
even going back to just, well, I touched on it, like how we have an avoidance culture. Like we have all these survivor and trauma stories and we don't even face them. So we live in this avoidance most of our life. And then simultaneously we have society conditioning us to think and feel and believe and behave a certain way. But I just want to pin this for like a part two of this, and going back to the one of these African ceremonies of seeing their loved ones going over and the excitement of adding to their ancestral team. There's a gal in the wellness healing field that I'd love to have us interview one day and be on this podcast. And her name is Ari, and she just said this thing that like blew my mind in terms of just like expansive perceptions. She said, "What if on the other side of the physical realm, there a baby shower is being had for you?" And there's this like, there's this whole like, oh wow, it's a return to home. Like there's a lot of positive ways to include in our perception of death. But she has an amazing story and can't wait to like have her on here too one day.
I'm excited about that. Yeah, to just speak to it further, I would love for celebration to be included along with, grief. And yeah, have a big party for me, do something do something fun. Um, I love I love that there are people out there that I think have such positive beliefs about death and what comes next that they can find joy in their loved ones passing. I think I think it's fascinating for any religions that also believe that after death there's something great, how how much fear is also how much fear and how much clinging on to life there is when something happens or when you get sick and when you're on your deathbed and there's this pray to God to make them stay. When I don't know. I've thought about that recently and thought about just the fears around death and how do you allow your beliefs to help mitigate those fears um or replace those fears. What is your belief about what comes next?
Ooh, and yeah, just to speak what you said, I think it's tough when you have your life, your attachments, your family, breakfast the next morning, like just like all the grounding comforts here. And then you're facing, age or disease and things like that. And yeah, it's hard to switch over to, oh, actually, there's supposed to be something even better on the other side. Can I be in a place of acceptance and readiness? Um, I don't subscribe to really know what's on the other side, but I do believe in cycles and the infinite continuum that what is in one state at one time will transition to another state. So the idea that we go in and out of energy and matter, and whatever that may look like. But I used to be more into coming up with concrete belief systems of, reincarnation, or, I think about Matrix, right? I love when Neo goes to the Oracle, and the Oracle reminds me of like the in between. Like, okay, I'm headed back into the ocean to be a part of Source until life and all the determining factors and choice creates another output into the physical realm again to experience life in some other place or some other. So that's kind of what's in my head, but I don't get too stuck in what it is.
I agree. I'm open, very open-minded when it comes to what's next. And I think that that also has given me permission to just be present for the here and now, to not worry too much about it, and to make sure that my actions are based on the here and now. And I guess my connection to God or soul in each present moment versus thinking about if I do this life right, I'm going to like get this reward of going somewhere. That has kind of felt uncomfortable for me to think of it that way. So, yeah, whatever's next, let's go. I'm down for it. Um,
I think that might even be like the heart of this topic is really landing in gratitude and presence for the
yeah,
moments that we're living in and how easy it is to lose track of that.
yeah. Have you ever had a near-death experience or a moment where you thought, I might die?
Well, we know that you have, so we can't. More excited to hear your story on this one, but I haven't. I have not had anything significant. The most recent like kind of fear shock that I went into was just I was again in 2024 I lived on the Big Island, and there was a 5.7 earthquake, and I'm in Hakalau, and this is happening. I think Pahoa might have been where it originated. And yeah, everything, the whole building I was in shook. There was a lot of glass windows and glass doors, so the glass started shaking, things falling off the walls, paintings. And yeah, I'd never seen the wrath of Mother Earth so up close and personal, to hear the rumble, to feel everything shaking around you. I was scared to run out of the double glass door because I was like, is that glass going to just crush on me as I try to? And then like 10 seconds later, I was like, I just need to run out that door because doesn't feel like it's any safer in here. So, I mean, that's minor, but that's as close as I can come. And then this is like an opposite answer to the question in a way, but crazy enough, I one time hit somebody with my car. They were riding their bike crossing an intersection, and I went into shock. I went into partial shock because I thought that I had taken their life. And it all happened so fast. They went flying, to the passengers to the this way. I'm driving this way. They go flying this way. So I didn't really see where they landed. All I did was had this. I just ended up this way. I stopped my car and I just thought the worst. I mean, thankfully they were okay and everything, but it's unique to like be in a place where you think you might die, but it's equally as unique to be in a place where you think you might have taken someone's life. Like that feels probably just as awful. And I just remember going into shock, and like time slowed down. It was a whole other realm of being in. But yeah, that's as close as I've gotten.
Okay.
to the subject physically. How about
I
you?
oh in it was my senior year of high school. I was driving home in a top-heavy SUV and it had rained and my I was going on a road that was downhill. The side so right off the road into the grass was all just like wet and muddy. And I had went just off the road a little bit and my front tire caught all of that mud and it just started pulling me to the right. And so then I overcorrected. And so next thing you know, I'm spinning and then all of a sudden flipping. And I flip over thinking I'm just going to continue rolling and this is it. And similar to what you said, where like time slowed down and that I'm sure 10 seconds felt like a whole minute or a couple minutes where inside I'm kind of screaming or saying, maybe not screaming, but just saying like, no, like I didn't get to say goodbye and just thinking about all of the people that I loved. But luckily, instead of it continuing to roll, it literally just flipped on its head. And then there I am hanging upside down. Um, kind of in shock, just, oh, I made it and craziest thing that's happened. And um, yeah, it's interesting. But that's probably my only experience. Um,
And then what
I
was it
remember
like right after? Like you're upside down, time comes back into fold. You're at some point you're like, I'm alive. Like
but and now it's this assessment of how do I get out of here? I can hear people. It was a loud enough crash that people ran out of their house. There was a couple of people that came. Um, and so then after unbuckling and then falling down and climbing out the broken window and all of that, just looking at the aftermath and calling my parents and
the driver's side
police.
window smashed.
Um,
Like which window did you climb out of?
I think I
Was it
climbed
the
out.
windshield?
It was either the windshield or like the passenger window. Um, Yeah, my memory is a little foggy, but yeah, waiting for the cops, waiting for my dad, waiting for a tow, just just in shock. And realizing just how quickly something like that can change your life. So,
I remember you. I remember when this happened to you. Of course, we're siblings, and yeah, just in hearing this story more than one time, I always take note of like how you were able to in like a 5 second window or something somehow expand your feelings and thoughts about all the people you didn't say goodbye to. And I just always remember that because I was like, it's I just feel like I'd be trying to manage the situation. And I was just impressed that you had all that time to compassionately like try to connect with your tribe and your people in the middle of rolling in a circle in a car.
yeah, that was what came to mind, right? Like, which is very interesting, but I think it highlights what life is about, at least for me, which is the connection and the love that I get to share with people. And for that reason, as I've gotten more comfortable talking about death and thinking about death and wanting to be in a space where I wake up every day and make peace with the fact that the end is inescapable, um, I've wanted to just prepare for that so that maybe in the next time I have a near death experience or when I am meeting my fate, maybe that won't be the thought on my mind because I've done things recently to try to express to people, to try to solidify like that I love you and that it's okay and trying to, I guess, leave nothing left unsaid. So that has definitely helped, I think. But yeah, how this brings me to my next thought, which is how has death touched your life? Because if the relationships that we have are the most important, and if when we die, our legacy lives on usually through the hearts and minds of people that we've touched. Um, who have you lost, and how has that impacted you? Or what was your first, who was your first loss? Um,
I remember, we lost our half brother a while back, but we didn't know him. And so it was, had you ever met him,
no.
Earl? So you had never even met him. I had met him and spent some time with him for a very brief period as a child. So I remember when we heard the news, I was probably knee deep into my own avoidant upbringing of, you hear that term, like you can over therapize a child when they're just trying to survive and get through adolescence. So in our adolescence, we got that news, and I'm in my adolescence, plus I don't know him. And so it was really, yes, we just lost a family member at that time, but um, I didn't I didn't have a lot of emotional capacity at that time. I think I just went straight to my beliefs, which can be bypassing. And that was, oh, well, he's on the other side now, or, something like that, rather than feeling grief or anything. But so for the longest time, I didn't have an experience of loss that hit close. And then I did lose my childhood best friend. But there was such a gap between, like, we were best friends as children, and then we lost touch for 10, 15 years. And then when I finally did reconnect to him, I found out he was not in a good place. And then like a year or two later, I found out from his sister that he took his life. That was probably the first loss that I like felt because I had the childhood memories, the really fond childhood memories of us waking up and watching Garfield on Saturday mornings and playing Nintendo and things like that. So he was my weekend bud, and that shook me a little bit. And then of course, losing our recently since the pandemic, our father and one of our sisters, both to suicide, has been extremely impactful and touching, and just really just letting death is real, and speaking to the avoidant culture, and how myself I've probably avoided some really profound topics in my own life. So now you couldn't avoid it anymore. It's like it's right here, and yeah, some impactful periods of sadness and grief and confusion, and yeah, and especially during the pandemic too, when everything else is happening, it felt like a lot to process it all.
Yeah, I agree with you there. My first loss was, well, it was our half brother, but I think there was just an unawareness for him and who he was, that even in being told about it, I think it was hard for me to understand, what was going on. Um, but we lost our neighbor, who then becomes our grandmother with our mom's remarriage. So um, when she passed, she had been sick,
This is Barb.
yeah, with
Mm.
cancer, and she had been at her house in a hospital bed and like declining for some time. And so there was one day that I think, based on her vitals, they knew she was probably going to pass, and they sent all the kids over to where we were staying, and we were in the living room like throwing this ball around to each other. And all of a sudden, everyone just stopped. It was like we could all feel like that she had passed. And then someone, I can't remember who it was, walked in the front door and was like, hey, like Barb had passed. And it didn't I think my response to it also depended upon the fact that it was a slow decline. There was an awareness that it was coming, and then there was time. And then the second loss I had was when I was 13. There was a boy who I went to church with, and at a basketball game, he just collapsed. They rushed him to the ER, and he had issues with his heart. And that one really shook me because it just felt like that's not fair. He has life to live. Um, that one was really hard because I think I couldn't make easy sense of it. Um, and then, yeah, losing our dad, our sister, and then even our grandmother, who, to be expected with our grandmother, but it's just been a lot over the last few years to process and to make peace with this is the inevitable. Um, yeah,
Mhm. Moment of silence for those who've been with us and are still with us, but in a different way.
yeah, yes. Um, do you think about your own death or that question of if you could control it, if you could choose it?
This is one of my favorite questions of this series because it's something I've been thinking about since I was 18.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and I have, you choose your parents. Our parents were really into like alternative health stuff. And so I feel like I came into this world just eyes on like the aging culture and the dying culture. And it's like, this is not for me. Retirement's not for me. Living in the senior home is not for me. Um, 10 to 15 years of comorbidity, like suffering, lengthy suffering before you pass, none of that's for me. And so I've just always been like, I plan on staying healthy. And when I'm not healthy anymore, that's when we're having our celebration. Like that's when we're gonna start planning a party. And I saw two things that impacted me or that validated like all of these internal ideas. One, I had a friend from India who talked to me about one of their cultures where they would kind of dig their own grave. Like they knew death was coming or they felt a sense of completeness. And I'm like, yes, that's what I want. I want to arrive at a place where I feel complete and begin to prepare my own bed and go into that bed and then and pass gently. And another story, our Alice, like, one of our aunt mom or however we describe her,
Mom's
she
mom.
yeah, our aunt mom, she was a caretaker for Morris, is it Morris Shapiro? I wrote a whole blog on this and he was 101 years old and her caretaking was minimal. She would make food or do laundry, clean and things like that, but he was still very independent. He was 101 years old. He graduated from the University of Rochester, which was also I took college courses there, and he checked himself into hospice care and died 3 days later. No cardiovascular disease, no cancer. He was independent and he felt complete. And when Alice was telling me about him, and then I got to read, he's a surgeon, he's a professor, so he had such a documentable life story and path that I got to actually go on the internet and read up about that guy. And I was just like, wow, that literally has been in my head for all these years about how I want to pass. So yes, even though we're not promised tomorrow and you could be taken out at any moment, I at least believe in and have practiced the idea that this body is capable of being healthy and staying healthy. And even Deepak Chopra, who is one of the teachers in the school I recently went to, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, he did a whole lecture talking about how 95% of illnesses are preventable. And I'm like, say less, say less. Like if that's the case, let's live a preventable, nutritious, like healthy lifestyle. So I've really been on that kick, and I just have no interest. I'm just like, I detest not being healthy and suffering and comorbidity. I'm not into any of it. And so I'm going to do, I really value my health and vitality and cognition. And yeah.
I believe in that for you. Your I think that your beliefs and then your values and that desire are probably going to be what leads you to, be it research articles and meeting people and connecting with people who offer more information on how you can live a healthier life. And so I think your belief in your values will probably encourage and set you on that path. And I think you're doing a great job already. Another thing that you had said that I wanted to highlight was that you don't plan on retiring. And I remember you said that to me, I think when I was 20, and just getting out of college, things like that. And it really impacted me because the American dream and the values here, it's like, put money into your 401k and then like get to whatever age and retire. And you were the first person to introduce this idea of what does that even mean? Why would you want to retire at 50 or 60? You have this whole life to live. You can still be doing retirement sounds like you're just like ready to die and I think there's statistics on the decline that happens when you stop engaging in work and activities and things like that. So it's so important, even if you're financially set, to have things every day that you're invested in and driven by. But yeah, it changed my mind a lot, and I have thought less about that word or idea of retiring, but more about if I take care of my body and really value my health, then I can maximize my life for as long as I possibly can. Um, I'll also say in terms of dying, I don't want to die by getting eaten by a shark. And I've always felt like maybe that was my fate. I'd had nightmares about it living in Indiana where there are no sharks. Um, so as
Do you
long as
watch scary movies? Or
I
did you
watched
watch scary
Jaws
movies? You what?
growing
What?
Jaws growing up. But yeah, I don't know. We had a pool, and when it was cloudy, I'd be like, maybe there are sharks in here. Just sharks just came up a lot for me. I don't know.
Yeah, when I start getting triggered about like the most awful ways I could think of to die, it's usually because I'm watching something crazy or yeah. Or once in a while I'll be in a situation where I'm afraid of heights and I was like, oh wow, I'm in a height situation or I'm high up somewhere and I'm feeling very like uncomfortable. I was like, oh, did something happen to me in
In
another
past life.
in a past life that's like surfacing right now? Or if I'm underwater and I know I've stayed under too long, then I might be like, God, this would be awful to like to go this way.
Yeah, I just need it to happen quickly. If it's an accident, if it's my soul releasing itself, I just need it to happen quickly. But ideally, if I could, as you said, I am complete, lay down and just ascend, I would do that.
And you
I've read a book. It's like the Tibetan book on living and dying, I think. And they talked about that practice, being able to release yourself, which I just think is phenomenal.
yeah. And it's just, another great reason to have conversations like these is also just and there's a there's someone in our facilitator program. Their name is Oak, and they were talking about preparing, having your paperwork in order so that if you do end up somewhere in an accident or in a hospital, it's not a complicated mess of what kind of direction is going to be taken for you. And so those are other great reasons to talk about the subject. And I now have a will filled out, and I think you're one of the two people on it, and our brother is on it. So, if anything unforeseen does happen, or God forbid, we won't be in a complicated mess about decision making and what direction to go in, because that's a lot of that, a lot of my values and my direction and how I want to leave if I'm in a really bad situation is already laid out in paper and written in paper.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. What other questions do you have, if any, or thoughts?
Mm, I don't know.
I'm feeling complete.
Are we feeling complete? This could be the end. Just on that last topic, though, we were talking about retirement and like how you die. And I did want to say, uh, and the way that America, promotes it. And it is interesting, right? The term golden years is usually like post-retirement, 70 and 80. And I've always been like, actually, I think the golden years are like now and not like at the end. Um, which is why, yeah, it's hard to imagine just the idea of living against your grain or your essence during the golden period, and then you end up with enough savings, but how golden is it really? And then like lastly, just thinking about like the culture of Japan. And I know Japan can be an overworking culture, so there's probably some issues there. But that was where I first heard of a culture that doesn't have a word for retirement. So supposedly in their dictionary or in their language, there is no word for retirement, and it is because of how much they believe in activity and community and connection at all stages in your life. And so having that balance and those inclusion, that integration for the whole extent of your life is really kind of essential to being alive and to being healthy.
Yeah, yeah, so true. Well, for our listeners, we have a question. How has this podcast influenced you to talk more about death or make peace with it, reflect on it?
Or have any inspirations that have come to mind just from this talk?
Yeah. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time,
Peace, Sammers.
peace.
I just wanna wake up, get my cake up, praise my maker, ayo, 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 ayo. Nice. I was ready to keep singing.